Hey everyone, and welcome to Dwarf Fortress for Dummies 2012 Part 3. So at the end of the last episode, I started talking about how to plant fields underground. And as you can see, I've got one right here. So at underground fields, there's only certain types of plants that you can actually grow here. However, these tend to be the ones that your dwarves prefer the most and are the safest to plant usually because they don't require you going outside. Bad things happen outside. Well, bad things happen inside too, but nobody likes going outside. Alright, so the plants that you can do, you've got dimple cups, quarry bushes, sweet pods, plum helmets, and it's worth noting cave wheat also, and sweet pods, but I didn't already say those. It's worth noting that each type of plant that you grow can be used to produce a different type of alcohol. So when you are planting crops, whether they're indoor or outdoor, I strongly suggest that you do at least two different kinds of crops at a time. Now, note, of course, that you can only have one of a given type of plant growing in a field plot at any given season, right? So right now I have plum helmets growing year-round, but if I were to create another farm plot, which I'll do now, B and P for farm plot, I can set this one for a different crop, and I can even make one for each of the type of underground crop seeds that I began the embark with. So the process for planting outside is almost exactly the same, except the difference is that if you didn't embark with the seeds that you need to grow, you can usually get them by designating plants outside to be harvested. And the way that you do this is with the designations and then gather plants. So D for designations and then P for plants. And now when you select some plants here, you're going to have somebody with a labor enabled to come out and harvest them. And so this is a shrub. It's not really clear what kind of plant this is, but if I look at some of the other ones here, I guess they're all just classified as shrubs. Well, just like there's different kinds of indoor plants, there's a variety of different kinds of outdoor plants. So suffice it to say that when you start gathering these seeds, you're going to be able to make farm plots outdoors with the new seeds that you gather. And if you do decide to do outdoor plots just for having more variety when you cook or brew or whatever, I suggest that you figure out a way to keep your dwarves safe. So maybe make kind of an isolated, walled-in outdoor farm plot. Alright, so that pretty much covers agriculture. I'll probably go into irrigation later, but the basic principle I'll just kind of cover quickly right now. Let's say that on my first Z level down that I dug down here, these underground tiles were not suitable to grow plants on. This will happen sometimes. I think that only sand and clay can be used to grow plants on by default underground. If you were to have like a rock layer immediately under, you could still grow plants there, but you have to get it muddy first. And there's a few different ways to do this, but they basically all involve tapping into a nearby pond or river. Now, when you do this, you have to be careful not to delve too deeply and too greedily into the ponds, because if you do that, you could flood your fortress if you're not careful. Fluid dynamics are, fluid physics are sort of fully modeled. So if I were to dig a trench from the river into my fortress, the water would basically rise to the highest level of the water in the river, just like in real life. So here the river would basically fill up my entire fortress on this level. And in fact, if I had more levels going down, which I do, it would actually go down the stairs, which I have set up over here, and just flood everything. So that's all bad. You can set up floodgates and hatches and things like that to do some creative irrigation techniques, and I illustrated one of the ways to do this in my older Dwarf Fortress 2010 series. So I'm not going to go into that in too much depth right now. If you're curious, check out the dwarffortresswiki.org. It's got all kinds of great suggestions for things you can do there. So moving along, plants are one source of food and a vital one for brewing, so you always want to have that going, but there are other sources too. So there's meat. There's two ways to get meat after you embark. You can slaughter animals that you embarked with or that you bred in captivity, or you can have hunting happen. And when you're embarking, I didn't really cover this, but if you choose a dwarf and give him make his highest skill ambushing, if you allocate the most points to ambushing, you will actually start out with a crossbow, some bolts, a quiver, and some armor, and he will basically be a hunter. And some other good skills to give him are crossbowman, or crossbow dwarf rather, and I believe hammers, because in melee he'll use the crossbow as if it's a hammer. And of course crossbowman helps him shoot better. So what will happen then is when you kill an animal, if you have a butcher workshop set up, the hunter should bring the slaughtered animal to the killed animal to a butcher shop. So real quick, I'll just build one of those. So you can see, build workshop, and then butcher's workshop is U. So again, that was B, W, U. Now, I actually want to dig out a little room for this, because butcher's workshop tend to attract flies, and your dwarves will actually get negative thoughts from being around flies. So I'm just going to dig out a little room off to the side here that my butcher shop can occupy all by itself. And if I put a door there, theoretically that should keep most of the flies inside this room. So the only one who will be bothered by the flies is the butcher himself. So in the meantime, let's go over to the mason workshop and build another door, like so. And we will build that workshop in here, the butcher's workshop right there. So I did embark with a hunter, I believe. I'm pretty sure that that preset, the DF Vid Toots 2012 preset that I used for the dwarf skills when I embarked, should have included a hunter dwarf, and in fact I can check and see. Yep, here he is. So just to actually tell you there, I'll cover this real quick. Status, which I just brought up, is Z, and I think I talked about this a little bit before when we were looking at stocks and kitchen and things like this, but here you can see I've got he's called a ranger here. You can also press U, which is a unit list, and it's actually got separate tabs for dead and missing. There's that dog that got killed by the sea lamprey. Here, oh my god, Panda Man? This place is outrageous. Panda men and women, God knows what. Oh god. Alright, so I've got camels and yak cows and stuff like this here, and I've got my citizens here, and there's my hunter. So I can actually check out some of these hotkeys down here. I can zoom to him to see where he is. I'll press C. So he is right there, hanging out at the wagon. So it looks like he's not actually hunting right now. Maybe there's no game in the area that he can hunt. Anyway, so let's go back downstairs then. And somebody's inviting me to a League of Legends game. Alright, so I'll resume. This guy's going to come down here and build this butcher shop. See, did somebody build us a door yet? Looks like he's in the process of building that door right now. And there's my door, so I'll build that. And there we go. We got a chalk door. Alright, so hunting just kind of takes care of itself. One thing you'll probably find is that you're going to need to keep up a steady supply of crossbow bolts. And those are actually produced at a crafts dwarf's workshop. So what I would do for that is B for build, W for workshop, and then crafts dwarf's workshop is R. So I'm going to build that right next to the mason shop and the carpenter. So once that's done, I can just quickly show you how to build crossbow bolts. They're hidden, kind of. It's not the most obvious thing, but here we go. Alright, so I'm pressing Q to interact with this building. Here I can add a new task, and if you scroll through here, you're not going to see crossbow bolts, and you're going to be confused until you realize that you can actually choose what kind of material you want to make the crossbow bolts out of. You can make them out of wood or bone. So for starters, I would probably make them out of bone, since it's nice to save your wood for furniture. And I may actually have some wood out here in the refuse pile, wherever it is. So I'll try to go ahead and make some bone bolts and see what happens. I might just get an error message that says that there's no bones I can use, and if that's the case, I can just make some out of wood instead. No big deal. So Alright, on to the next method of acquiring meat. Yep, there's my error message. I don't have unrotten bone body part. So I can just make some out of wood. I'll just set a couple to be made real quick. Wood, wooden bolts. That's the deal right there. And then of course you can create an ammo stockpile. Okay, so the other way to get meat is you can slaughter the animals that you embarked with. I'm not actually going to do it right now because I want them to mate and make more animals, but the way that you would do it is you would bring up your status tab with Z, and then this is the animals tab that you want to go to. You have to press enter because you're not actually on the animals tab even though it's highlighted. And here we are. So you can see I've got quite a few female dogs. Should have... oh, the male dog died. That's unfortunate. Although I do still fortunately have a hunting dog who's male. So he should be able to beget puppies with the female dogs. Then I've got a female cat and a male cat and some hens here and things like that. Now, if I decided that I want to slaughter one of these, let's say I have a surplus of female dogs. I know I'm a monster, but don't worry, I'm not really going to go through with it. I would press B for slaughter. And now you see it says ready for slaughter over here. Now, if I were to press escape, pretty much right away, a task is going to get added to the butcher shop to slaughter the animal that I designated here to be slaughtered. I don't want to kill my dog because I like having dogs. They can be trained to help in hunters and things like that, and you can actually designate them to be ready for hunting and things like that here. So, I don't know what that... oh, whatever. Whoa. Okay, so we're not going to slaughter this animal, but that is how you would do it. I would advise you not to slaughter too many animals at once, because sometimes what will happen is if you have too much raw meat and not enough labor devoted to cooking the raw meat, it can spoil. And when it spoils, it's going to make a cloud of miasma, or miasma, I'm not sure what the correct pronunciation is, but it's basically a cloud of noxious fumes that are emitted from rotting meat, whether it's animal or dwarf or whatever. And it gives your dwarves unhappy thoughts and has a potential to make them sick, so that's bad. Alright, so you know, when you slaughter an animal, and especially a large animal, usually just do them one at a time as needed. Don't designate a whole bunch of them to get slaughtered all at once or you're going to have a bad time. So that pretty much covers meat. So the next one would be eggs. So the way that you get eggs is from fowl. So ducks and roosters and turkey can all lay eggs. And what you're going to want to do is build some nest boxes. The nest boxes are going to get claimed by the female fowl, and then they are going to lay eggs in there. Now, you got to decide whether you want to just start collecting eggs right away, or if you want to expand your fowl population. Because if you want to actually have some of the eggs hatch into additional chickens or turkeys or ducks or what have you, you've got to make a quick change so that the eggs don't get set aside for you know, as a food product right away. So what you have to do is you have to go to status, kitchen, and then once you have some, eggs will show up here, and you've got to toggle cook on them. So I don't have any right now because I haven't constructed any nest boxes, but I'll try to show you later once I actually get some eggs laid. But they would pop up on this list, and then you would just press C when you have it highlighted to toggle cook, and then you can have some eggs hatch into, you know, male and female, and then you'll have a larger population, which means more eggs, which means more food, which means happy dwarves. So I advise you to at least let a couple of batches of eggs, you know, hatch and get to adulthood before you go too crazy with cooking up the eggs. So before I forget, then I'll show you how to build a nest box. I believe that it needs to be done from the... I could have sworn it was Craftsdwarf, but it might actually be the Mason shop. Let's take a look here. Where am I missing it? Oh, I think it's stone actually. Hang on. Rock. There we are. Okay. So yeah, it's hiding. Sorry. what you have to do, let me just go back. When you go to the Craftsdwarf's workshop, you get to build it out of rock. So press Enter or G when you have that task, and then you go down here to Nest Box. And I'm going to build a few of them, because I actually have like 3 female hens, a female duck, and a female turkey, I think. So it should need a total of 5. Great. Now, I'll just, while I'm doing this, I'm going to come down here and dig down a little deeper. Somebody gave me an excellent tip. I don't have their name in front of me, but before, when I had these upstairs, I said that I had to build stairs adjacent because I couldn't build downstairs and upstairs. Well, it turns out you actually can do that. So thank you, whoever that was. You can actually just designate downstairs right on top of upstairs and make it an up-down stair. So thank you for that. So I'm going to come down here and just designate a little bit more stuff to get dug out in 3D. Like so. And then we'll let that happen. And I don't know what my miners are doing. I suppose they're probably drinking or eating or whatever. So I'll take care of it. I just want to make sure I have some extra stone. Alright. So once these nest boxes start getting made, I'll show you what you would do. You would pretty much want to build them out in a pasture where you have your animals. If you remember from, I think, the first episode, or maybe it was the second one. I think it was the second. I showed you how to make a pasture. And you can quickly see where it is by pressing I for zones, and it will make any nearby zones flash like this, or rather they'll be gray and then they'll flash when you cursor over it. So when you construct the nest box, you want to make it inside this pasture, because the animals pretty much don't venture outside of it. And again, you want to build one for each of the female creatures, fowl, that are going to be laying these eggs, because they're going to claim it and they're going to lay their eggs in there, and only one can be in there at a time. There only needs to be one male in these kind of mating couples, so sort of polygamous fowl orgy going on here. So to build the nest box, I believe it would be capital N, is that what it is? Yeah. So I don't actually have one right now, so I can't build it, but when you're ready to build your nest box, it is B for build, and then capital N for nest box. And then you would build them in here, and then you can have eggs. Alright, so that covers that. The next thing is fishing. I don't know whether I have a fisher dwarf or not. I think one of these guys might be. You'll usually get fisher dwarves in one of your migrant waves. As the seasons progress, you're going to get dwarves that are going to immigrate to your settlement, and probably, at least in my experience, one of the most common professions that they tend to be, at least in the early waves, is fisher. But this is probably a decent time to show you how you can actually assign tasks to your dwarves. I'm just going to touch on this lightly at first, because well, it's not super complicated, but let's get into it here. So there's a utility that you're going to want to use to assign tasks, or labors rather, I should say. So dwarves will only perform a certain task if they have the labor enabled, right? If you don't have any fisher dwarves, because they don't fish, it's going to be because they don't have the labor enabled. In theory, if you were to go in and enable the labor on any of your dwarves who's typically not got something to do, then when they're not doing their other tasks, they'll do fishing, for instance, or hunting. So what you can do is, let me bring up the Lazy Noob Pack GUI. Under Utilities here, Dwarf Therapist. I've already launched it, so I don't need to double click, but you would double click it and then you get this guy. You connect it to DF, and it's basically going to read the memory of the game as it's running, and it's going to give you this nice grid here that's going to tell you what labors your dwarves have. So I'll show you how to understand this. So here are your dwarves vertically in this column, and you can see what their professions are. And if you mouse over them, you can even see kind of what their experience levels are with different things. So the woodcutter is a skilled axe dwarf and all that stuff. Now, horizontally along the top here, you've got the laborers. And what I'm looking for is fishing. Fish cleaning and dissection are for preparing the raw fish, but really right now I just care about fishing. So what I'm going to do is, since my hunter doesn't seem to be hunting, I'm going to go ahead and enable the fishing labor for him. And the way that I do this is just by clicking on this square. When it's dark like this, that means that the labor is enabled. If it's light like these, that means it's not enabled. So you can see, for instance, that the butcher has carpentry, feed patients and prisoners, recover wounded, butchery, tanning, labor's enabled. So now that I've enabled fishing, there's one more quick thing I've got to do, and that's commit pending changes. Now, if you're trying to build some workshop and the workshop isn't building, and you press Q and you interact with it, you're going to see that you require some labor, probably. And if you don't have that labor enabled, you can just come in here and you can enable it, and then theoretically someone will build it. So any of your dwarves can do anything in the game, basically, as long as they have the labor enabled. They may not do it well, and they may not do it fast at first until they get experience, but they can do it. So don't get scared when it says that you don't have that labor. So there, I've committed the pending changes, and I can minimize this again. And now you don't need any special equipment to fish. So my hunter, because he's not doing anything, will theoretically try to fish, in the river or ponds or whatever around here. He just grabs the fish with his hands, and hopefully the fish don't grab back. So that covers that. You can also do a few other things for food. Mostly, meat and fishing and plants are going to be your main sources of food. But you can also do beekeeping and milking. So to milk animals, you've got to have another workshop type. So let's look at that. The workshop that you need is going to be a farmer's workshop, which is somewhere around here. Farmer's workshop. So that is BWW. And I'm going to just go ahead and build it over in this corner. The cedar logs. In order to milk an animal, you need to have buckets. Buckets can be made out of a couple different substances. Wood is one of them, metal is another one. Wood is probably the easiest thing. So once this farmer's workshop gets built here, it says I don't have any economic hard rock. So basically what that means is the rock that I'm getting is not suitable for building nest boxes. I think maybe I need some more chalk. So why don't I just designate some of this to get dug out. A lot of gypsum around here. Gypsum is used to make plaster, so that could be nice. Plaster will be something nice for the hospital system, which I'll get to before too long. So now that I got some chalk, let me go back. Sometimes if you don't have the proper materials, the orders will actually get cancelled, and that appears to be the case here. So I've actually got to go back in and re-add the tasks to create these nest boxes, and if you recall I needed 5 of them. So now I can resume, and somebody should come build these nest boxes out of chalk, I would hope. So where was I? Yeah, from milking. So over here, let's see, you can see it needs any workshop and farming. So somebody should come build this, because the farmer has farming, obviously. I think that probably he's just seeing this planting task as a higher priority right now, but at some point somebody will build this. I could also just give somebody else the farming, I could give somebody else farming labor, and then somebody else would build it. But when you build this, you're going to basically have a task that you can add on there to milk an animal. And when you do that, you're going to collect the milk in a bucket, and it's going to go into your food stockpile. From there, you can process it into cheese, or you can just leave it as milk and it will be a drink, or I think you can cook it into meals. There's a lot of things you can do with it. For bees, I haven't really messed around with bees a whole lot, but the first thing that you've got to do is construct a hive, and I believe that this is another thing that you do here at the Crafts Dwarf's workshop, so I'm just going to add one on there. So there's a rock hive. I'm going to pause for a bit here and let these things get done building, and then I'll show you the hives and nest boxes in action. Before I forget, I've got these nest boxes building here, but after I set that fishery worker to fish, I remembered an important point. Your dwarves will not eat raw fish. They are not into sushi. They will only eat processed fish. So what you have to do is you have to build another workshop. This one is going to be, build workshop, and it should be the fishery. Fishery I will build next to my still unconstructed farmer's workshop. And resume. And I'm probably going to have to go enable the fish cleaning and dissection labors here, so I'll just do this real quick. I'll give this hunter the fish cleaning and dissection, and in theory that should make it so that he will also prepare the fish at this workshop. And then I'll commit those changes, and then I'll resume. So I was just noticing that in my stocks here, I actually do have a couple of raw fish, some pond turtles, which I assume came from this pond over here. Let's actually see. I can probably go find where the guy is. Press U, and then I'll look at my hunter here and zoom to him. Looks like he's storing an item in a barrel, so I could follow him around and see where he goes. Where does he go? Oh, he's going over here. So it's looking like he's getting him out of one of these ponds here. Alright, so let's check and see what the status is on that other stuff that I had building. Looks like everything's done. So here is my nest boxes, and then there is my hive. So what I'll do is I'm going to go out here and build a couple nest boxes. I didn't build all of them because I was getting impatient, but let me just quickly check and make sure I'm building within the pasture. So this should be good right about here. So I'll build capital N for nest box, and come back down there, and we'll build 2 of them adjacent to each other. They don't have to be, but just for the sake of tidiness. So somebody should drag those out here. Now I can also build that hive. This one I want to build away from all of my animals and stuff because the bees can actually sting. But where is that hive? There it is. Alt plus H. That's kind of a weird hotkey. So I'll build it up here. Chalk hive. So like I said, I haven't really messed around with this. I've read about it a little bit. Basically what I know about hives is that once you build it, you've got to leave one option alone. I'll show you in a sec. I'll let this get built. You kind of just let hives go on their own. There's an option that you can set to harvest from it, and the trick is here that let me pause for a sec. The trick is that when you interact with these hives, you're basically going to have to make a decision as far as, do you want to basically destroy the entire colony but harvest the honey, or do you want to split the hive in 2, in which case it's going to put it in another hive, and then you'll have 2 hives but no food product. So you kind of have to decide, how many do you want. If you want just 1 hive, then you can kind of harvest from it whenever and just have to build a new one up, or you can split it and have additional hives. That's my understanding. I haven't really messed around with that much, so I apologize for my ignorance on that. And that pretty much covers most of food stuff that you're going to need to know. The one kind of missing piece is how you actually cook food that needs to be cooked. And that is fairly straightforward. You're just going to build one additional type of structure. This is still not gotten built. The structure that you need to build is a kitchen. So build, workshop, and then kitchen. The hotkey for that is Z. And I'm going to build that by these other food things here out of chalk because I've got so much of it. and then resume. Now at a kitchen, you'll have the option to build, or not build rather, but cook a few different kinds of meals. I believe there's fine, regular, and lavish meals. The higher quality of the meal, I believe the more happy thoughts your dwarves get, and don't quote me on this, but I think it might actually use more food too. I'm not 100% sure about that, but I think that is how it works. So this is about to get built here in a second, so I can show you. So there's my kitchen, got constructed right away. Here I can add new task. So there's easy meal, sorry, not easy, regular, and lavish, but easy, fine, and lavish. It also renders fat, which is going to be a byproduct produced when you're butchering animals. It stays red until you actually have fat, which is referred to as globs in your stock screen. But for now, it's just going to be okay. So once your fortress population gets up high enough, it's probably not a terrible idea to start having a dedicated cook just pumping these meals out non-stop. They are going to give your dwarves much happier thoughts than if they were to just have, you know, some cooked meat, or raw meat even. They will eat meat raw, or some plump helmets or what have you. They really like to have these meals better. And if you look at their thoughts, which I can actually show you right now, you'll be able to see it will say that they've enjoyed a fine meal lately. So let's look at, we'll do unit here, and we'll look at like our hunter, and we'll press V to view him, and then enter for thoughts and preferences. So huge wall of text here, but he slept in the grass recently, he had a fine drink lately, he became caught up in a new romance recently, ooh, amore, and all this stuff. And if they have a nice meal, they're going to get happy thoughts, and it's going to show up here, you know, so-and-so enjoyed a fine meal lately, and things like this. So it's too bad that he slept in the grass. It makes me think maybe I need to, I don't know, I mean, I have a dormitory, and it should be set up correctly, so I've seen other dwarves sleep in here, so I'm not sure what his deal is. Maybe he just likes to sleep outside. Alright, so that's pretty much it for now. I appreciate you guys who have been leaving tips and things in the comments. I never said I was good at Dwarf Fortress. I'm just I'm just trying to pass on what knowledge I have. So I really do appreciate that, and keep them coming. There's some really great tips I've been getting from you guys. And if there's something you particularly want to see, let me know. I'm going to try to go in an order that makes sense. I'm kind of starting out with basics, and then I'll work my way up to more advanced topics later. I'm probably not going to go beyond about 10 or so episodes, because really by that many episodes I think you'll have the kind of gist of things, and if you've caught the bug, then you're gonna kind of want to research these things on your own, and hopefully you'll be able to get some more inspiration from kind of reading and doing your own research than just kind of watching me blunder through it. So that's it for now. Hope you enjoyed part 3, and look forward to part 4 within the next couple of days. Thanks.